Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to have the wonderful Natasha joining us today as our guest. Natasha, let's start with who you are and where you are in the world.
Hi, Jacky. Thank you firstly so much for asking me to come onto your podcast. I'm really excited about this. This is amazing. So I'm in London, UK, at the moment. I'm really curious to touch on all of these subjects, but I work with the Akashic Records. I'm an Akashic Records guide, mentor, and teacher. So I teach other practitioners from all around the world to tap into their Akashic Records for themselves and for their clients. So yeah, that's been a journey to get to that point. So I can't wait to dive into that.
Amazing. So we will talk about the Akashic Records a little bit later for anybody who's like, what on earth is that? Don't you worry, hang around and we'll get there.
Took me a
But we're
while.
going to start where we always start, and that is at the beginning. So when did you realize that something had to change, that your healing journey needed to start? What was the kind of moment for you?
Yeah, I think there've been several times, I have to say, over the journey that's happened for me. Um, but I think it was really 20 years ago, 22 years ago for me. So it has been a journey for me. And there was a really defining moment in my life where a couple of things happened. Firstly, I was in the corporate, in corporate, I was climbing the ladder, I was doing pretty well. I was in IT, I was working in IT, fixing computers, doing all the fixing stuff, and networking and that side of things and project management. Um, and there came a moment where I was kind of going to give my age away now, sort of like edging towards my 30s, just tipping over my 30, and thinking to myself, oh my goodness, is this gonna be my life? Just climbing the corporate ladder, doing the slog, and kind of making a really defined moment to step out of corporate, which on one part of my journey was like it took me to Bolivia, to the middle of the jungle. And that was like the first part of it. And then very soon after, I was in a very solid relationship, a very good relationship, something that I felt was going to be, my journey for the rest of our lives together. And then it promptly broke down very difficultly. Ended up not being particularly amicable in the long run, which was a real shame. But it was that for me was then the final catalyst. Here I had changed my entire life, walked away from corporate without really any understanding what I was going to do. And then my world fell apart. So I was like, okay, now what? So that was the beginning, and it took a beat.
Oh gosh, yeah. It normally does happen as I've heard from so many people and experienced myself that when you kind of open up to the space of healing, so many things come in at once. They're like, "Oh, you're ready to look at this. Well, here, just look at everything at the same time." Like it
Oh
can be
yes.
quite an interesting
Yeah.
moment when you kind of start opening up to this. And I think like my kind of thoughts on it is that's why so many people kind of slink back and go back to what they were doing before because it can feel like a really overwhelming thing. And as you were kind of going through that journey, moving out of corporate, relationship breaking down, etc., like what did you have to embrace about yourself and like get to know about yourself in order to sort of make that process possible?
Yeah, I think that took me quite a while actually. If I'm perfectly honest, there was a number of things that happened, and my memory's probably not as good as it used to be, but like there were a number of things I do remember that journey then kind of slowly unfolded for me because I was really in a space of mistrust, really, of something that I felt. I was very certain about my path, about where I was going, what I was going to doing. And first of all, I thought that that was going to be corporate. As that turned out, that has definitely not been the case. But that was more of a choice. That was more of a like, okay, I'm just going to go and explore it. And actually, interestingly, it was never a consideration to walk back to corporate. I just kind of thought I need to figure out a different way. But my trust was really eroded. Things that I wasn't very spiritual prior to my 30s, but I did have a level of trust, gut instinct, like something nudged me, give up corporate, go to Bolivia for 3 months, and like, okay, learn Spanish, do this, and be in the middle of nowhere that was very new and different to me.
Mhm.
So it was really then became a very because I couldn't understand why it had all kind of gone a bit like now I was like directionless. So for me, it took quite a while for me to build my trust. So there were a number of steps that kind of ensued after that. I found Reiki very like energy healing very randomly. I started to do a bit of yoga. I started to look after myself a little bit more. And then I must have seen a workshop. And I, again, as I said, I wasn't very spiritual and thought, oh, I've heard of Reiki. Someone's obviously clearly mentioned this to me. Um, and I went on a weekend and I was blown away. I was like, I don't understand this with my mind, but I understand this with my body. And this is a huge part of what I teach now because the human sometimes doesn't get it, but the body, the soul, and our cellular memory remembers something and goes, this feels familiar, although our ego and our mind go, but this is ridiculous. How could this possibly work? How can you put your hands on somebody and they feel different, like, and I can feel stuff. So then that was a journey, and then I started to read a little bit more and started getting really curious and doing some coaching and learning how to be a coach. And then reading books that I didn't really know were about the Akashic records at that time, and this understanding that there's something so much bigger at play. And so it was a journey. It was like I took a step, something else would appear, a book would appear for me, a person would appear, and we'd have an amazing conversation. So it was a gradual thing over some years that my journey back to trusting that intuitive part took time.
My gosh, I love that so much. I love, like, I always call it an unfolding when you heal.
Yeah,
I love that you use that word as
yeah,
well, because it literally, that is what it feels like you're unfolding back into yourself, which is so incredible. And one of the, like, my favorite things that I've ever read is this idea that if you ever want to know the truth of what you should be doing, you listen to your body because your body doesn't know how to lie, but your mind always lies to you. And I was so blown away by that in my own healing journey
yeah.
because I, probably very similar to yourself, had no relationship with my body before I started this. I
Yeah.
never listened to it. And if anything, abused it most of the time in never giving it
Unavoidable.
what it needs. Yeah, exactly. So I think that, like, I absolutely kind of resonate with that thought of sort of that slow unfolding, and it's not like you make a decision that something's going to be different and then it's instantly different. There's so
Yeah,
much more to it than that, in that kind of
yeah,
like process.
yeah.
And as you were kind of weaving through that journey, were there moments where you kind of sat back and just thought, I can't do this, like I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, like the next sign wasn't coming quick enough, like how
Yeah.
did it feel?
Yeah, I think totally. There are moments where I was like, what am I doing? Like, how is this even like possible? What can I do? How can I do it? Um, because I come from a project management background, like everything was like it was like you run a project from the beginning to the end, and then you have an outcome, and it's very much set out, and there's certain steps to running big scale project rollouts. Um, and so I was very, very good at the risk analysis, like you do this, then you have to do this. And it was like my brain was always actively engaged. If I couldn't figure it out, then it was not worth doing. And as you say, it's like coming back to the body, which was for me, the first path was yoga. And, our bodies are an antenna, they're a receptor. They receive all this information, and then ego, mind, and everything we've learned about how we should do things goes, no, no, that's not logical. That's not practical. We must do this. Let's go ahead and do this. And so, there have been so many times where I've really sort of thought, wow, what am I doing? Breakdown moments, exhaustion, can't figure it out, don't trust it, like deeply get back into that pattern of I can't trust this. I feel something, but I don't know how to trust it, being let down again and not being able to take that next step. But I think through every breakdown, there's been a breakthrough. Like on the other side, it's like that deep moment of like experiencing something fully, not being ashamed of it. Like I was very good at like not having emotion about, not being too emotional about things. And I remember, girlfriends in the past going, I'm devastated at my breakup. I'd be like, oh, you'll get over it. Don't worry about it. It's like, it's fine. Life's good, come on. And then really feeling that was so unfamiliar with me, feeling in the trenches, feeling like I didn't know the way out. And so what I started to recognize was this pattern of I would take a few steps and it felt like I was falling back into the abyss. But then it was just a moment to, okay, right, what's going on here? And then I'd be further along. So I was always further than I thought. And I had to rewire that belief that I'm going backwards, that even though I took a step back, I was still moving forwards. And I think that that was a big, big part of my journey for me.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite, so one of the coaches that I worked with when I very first started my healing journey, when I was heavily depressed, everything was falling apart. She always spoke about this arrow analogy. Like,
Oh,
in order to move the arrow forward, you have to
to
pull
pull
back.
it.
And if you don't pull back far enough, the arrow will not go where it is supposed to. And it was such a, like, I saw you kind of like wiggle, like that feeling in your body where you just know intuitively, like that is exactly what needs to happen. Like that, like, oh, I remember getting that exact same feeling when she
Yeah,
told me that analogy, and just being like, oh my gosh, like it's not about feeling like you're going backwards. It's just about actually like this is what it takes in order to move forward.
yeah,
You have to be able to go in, feel, get ready. Like
yeah,
everyone, like so many people talk about it in so many different ways, that kind of like cocooning to become a butterfly, or that dancing analogy, like two step back, like in order to go forwards. Like there's so many ways that people talk about this, but it's the same concept every single time, that I think so many people don't realize they have to go through in order to get further along the healing journey and kind of get to that other end, which I think is, it's so important for people to understand. So thank you so much for kind of bringing that up. I think that that's amazing.
yeah,
So as you went on this journey, like one of the things that I know about my own journey is that a lot of my thoughts and beliefs massively changed about what I believed was possible, and like my outlook in the world changed so dramatically. So what was that like, what was the biggest change for you in that like shift of outlook as you kind of came through this healing journey?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a lot. And I think it's wrapped up in so many different things. I think for me, it was really coming back to self. I think the biggest curiosity I started to have when I stepped into the spiritual world was there was a lot of spirit talk about spirituality, especially 2015 to 20 years ago, where it was something outside of yourself. You were heading, like you had to find your spiritual nature. It was something outside of you. And I really couldn't get my head around that. Because I've been so practical, I've been very much about, I want to have an experience here on earth, but I knew that I was too much in my head, that I was trying to figure everything out, control thing. I was a perfectionist. I was a people pleaser. I was like, you name it, like literally still recovering from many of those beliefs. But it's like, it was like, I didn't, it never felt right for me to to feel like I had to go somewhere. Like ascension was a process where I was going somewhere outside of myself. I was trying to get to the top of the mountain. I always thought, how do I, because I live in London, right? I've lived in London all my life, not for much longer. We are on the move, which is exciting. But I've always had this burning question. It's like, how do I live in London and have a great life, have an amazing life, feel peace, feel at peace, at center with me? That became my spiritual question. And rather than how do I have to leave London in order to find it? I live in London. This is where my family is, and I grew up here. And so I think that that became the biggest learning, the biggest shift that I had to feel, embody, embrace, start to learn to walk through mindfulness, through coming back to presence of like, what do I have already that's so amazing in my life? Yes, my life felt like it fell apart, but what's incredible about my life that I can really, that can anchor me, that can then can keep me rooted in this life, that this is where the magic is, but how do I play more in the magic?
Oh, I love that. How do I play more in the magic? That's my favorite line so far. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. It's so incredible though, because when you talk about this idea of like it being an outward journey versus an inward journey, this is something that I also felt when I kind of came into
Mm,
healing. Um, and it was very much this like trying to find something outside of me to make me feel better or make me feel happy or make me feel more connected or whatever it was.
yeah.
And it's so interesting because for the listeners, they'll know that we run the Fearless You retreats. And in our retreat, like part of what we talk about is this idea of the hero's journey versus the heroine's journey. And because the world is so masculine and because the world works in that very logical project management, like
Yes.
in, start to end, like when healing started to be something or spirituality started to be something that was being talked about, everyone tried to plug it into a masculine plug and say,
Yeah.
well, it obviously must work like this, which means, and like if you look at the hero's journey specifically, you're trekking outwards to an outcome. And everyone thought that that is how we had to work. And then suddenly, some beautiful women got together and said, but actually, that's not how we come home to ourselves. That's not how this looks. If you look at all of the ancient tribes, if you look at all of the women's circles, if you look at
Yeah.
every single piece of writing, it all talks about women coming together and coming back to themselves and going inwards and being quiet and, that kind of meditation and all of those sorts of things. And it was so interesting when the world kind of started to shift that
Yeah.
narrative and say,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
you can be in the most chaotic place physically in the world and still be completely calm on the inside
Yeah.
because the outside has nothing to do with the inside.
Yes.
And it is that shift, isn't it, into that feminine, into that like
Yeah.
absolutely like we're just gonna put the masculine on hold for a second, come
Yeah.
back into our
Yeah.
feminine, get
Yeah.
back to where we need to be, and then use that masculine energy to go back into the world and get what we want.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's such an amazing shift, isn't it, when you actually start to understand that,
It,
and it changes your healing journey, doesn't
yeah.
it?
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And I love the way that you've just said that, because for me, it's I, I did a masterclass on this last week, but it's like it's about the union of the feminine and the masculine. It's how we bring it together. We are both. And how it's circular. The energy is circular. It moves around and it moves within you. And one informs the other and informs the other. And it's this beautiful flow. It's this beautiful, graceful dance of how we experience the feminine. We lean back and we receive and we're open and it's all within us, and then we allow that to inform what is the energy that we want to put out into the world. What do we want to create with this informed beautiful energy from the feminine? And I think it's so misunderstood as well. Let's be more in the feminine. The masculine is bad and masculine energy and like whatever. It's not, it's about the energies, right? But masculine energy is getting a bit of a bad rap. And I'm like, we love it. Like, but how do we allow it to all be in flow? Because we are all of ourselves. We are not in separation. It's not one fight against the other. it's like we're all of it. It's a bit like the shadow side again. It's like the bad, inverted commas, bad feelings. We want to eliminate those. Don't have a bad thought. Toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing. And I'm like, I don't get it. And that's what's kept me really, my feet, I think, beautifully and firmly on the floor, going, the magic is here. It really is. Like, how do we dance this dance here? And how do we embrace all parts of us? And sometimes things are uncomfortable. It's not to put us back, it's not to set us back. Like I used to believe, like, oh my gosh, this has come up and it's against me and I've done something wrong. And like, what have I done? And trying to analyze it. It's like, hang on a second, this is just for me in the space of my next level growth, expansion, the next level I'm being invited to. This part of me needs to shift. It doesn't even need to be eliminated. It needs to shift. It needs to come with me in a different guise. And how we bring all of ourselves to the table, I think, has been a massive part of my more recent journey over the last few years, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I think like it's so important for people to understand that like there's no right or wrong way to heal, but actually understanding that the world does put so much pressure on this idea that there's like a perfect way to do it. And this idea of like, you only have abundance if you only think good thoughts. And like none of that is true. It's about how you feel internally. And even if something bad is happening, if you can still feel good and understand it to be, as you said, in alignment and something that is working out for the best for you, like you can still have all of those amazing things regardless of what's going on around you. But I think for all of us on our healing journeys, we've gone through that like questioning as soon as anything bad happens. I remember saying to my business coach, oh gosh, years ago now, every time I try and launch something, something bad happens. And I'd made this attachment that I try and make money and bad things happen.
Yeah.
And like I basically stopped launching because I was just like, I'm so scared of like something bad happening. And it was ridiculous. Like the first time I was in the middle of a launch, my grandfather passed away. Like we knew it was coming. It had nothing to do with the fact that I was launching, but I obviously attached those two things.
Yeah.
The next time I launched, literally day 2 of the launch, my husband decided to take up some squeaky floorboards and ended up putting a nail through our water pipe.
Oh
And
my
then we had
gosh.
water literally pouring out of the top floor of our house, and we had to get an emergency power out.
Oh
And it was
wow.
literally like so stressful. And I was instantly like, bad things happen when I launch. Like, I can't do this anymore. And it's so interesting. As you said, like, we overanalyze in that masculine of like, there must be a reason why this happens. And
Yeah.
if there isn't a reason, then none of it makes sense. And then I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And like, the feminine energy is just not that. Like, it just
No.
doesn't exist like that. Like, it's just not that. It's
No.
so different. I think it's so important for people to understand that as you go on this journey, like in order to heal, you have to balance the two of them. Like you
Yeah.
can't shun the one or, sit really heavily in the one. There has to be a balance of the two.
Yeah.
And okay, I said we were going to go back to the Akashic Records, and I feel
Yes.
like this is a good place to
Yes.
go.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like this is a really good place. So you've mentioned that you now work with the Akashic Records,
Yes.
and I'm going to say, can you explain to the listeners what that is? But I'm going to give you a time cap because I know
Yes.
that you can literally talk about this for like a year. So
And
give
the
us a
rest.
brief overview of the Akashic Records. I am going to put all of Natasha's details below. So if you want to know
Okay.
more about the
Yeah.
Akashic Records, you can absolutely go over and follow her. And she's got amazing content on her Instagram that you can read all about and listen to and find about like masses of information. But give me like, I'm going to say like 2 minutes. I
Okay.
won't put you into like 30 seconds or anything crazy. Um, and then tell me how they actually link into your healing journey as
Yeah.
well. So, like, how did
Okay.
you get to this point with
Yeah.
the Akashic Records?
Yeah. Oh, great. Beautiful question. So you got the timer. No, just kidding. Because the Akashic Records really truly are vast and infinite source of wisdom, resources, information, guidance, everything. But in a nutshell, the Akashic Records are an energetic database of everything we ever do, think, say, speak, etc. And if we know now that everything is energy, everything we do, think, say has an energetic frequency, it has a vibrational field. And we also now know that energy cannot be destroyed. We cannot destroy energy entirely, but what we can do is transform it, which is what is so incredible, because we can go from feelings of sadness to joy, from overwhelm to peace and flow. So we can change and transform these energies very, very quickly, I might say, when we have this awareness and we have this, we can observe it. So everything is stored in the Akashic record, because when something has an energetic resonance, where does it go if it can't be destroyed? And that's what they call the Akashic record. It is coined in and talked about in various scriptures and religious texts as the book of life. So it has been something that's been around for a very, very long time. Now, the beauty of the Akashic records is it came into existence, or our Akashic record came into existence the moment our soul came into existence. So it holds all of this beautiful wisdom about who we are at soul level, and also everything we've ever experienced in every previous lifetime, and these mindset patterns and behaviors that we have that we recognize today, like, oh, tried to do something to make money and something always sabotages it. Now, that could be a belief from a previous life where you've had an experience around that, where money has always been taken away from you. And we can get to the root lifetime of a pattern and really gain an understanding of what the energetic pattern is. So we can understand the energy of it, the vibration, the frequency, and we can transform it to something else that we desire. So that might have been 2 minutes. So that's it in a nutshell. So
okay, I absolutely adore that. It's so, yeah, I find the Akashic Record so fascinating after knowing you for the last sort of year and kind of following what you do. I think it's incredible. So how did this kind of come into what you do now? Like, how did you transition over to working in this space as like part of your healing journey? What did that look like?
yeah. So I think it was coming to me in bite-sized chunks through books that I was reading, through things that I experienced, people talking about it. And I have to say, and it happens to pretty much 90% of people who come to me, they'll say, I keep hearing the word Akashic record, and now I'm here and I found your website, or I found your Instagram page, or I found this. And I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised. Like, we get the seeds. And again, it's like this remembering of something we have always had access to, because we are our Akashic record. If we think about everything we do is stored in the Akashic record, our Akashic record is an energetic reflection of us. And we're a physical representation of our Akashic record over centuries and over lifetimes and lifetimes. So our Akashic record is us. Like, we are it. So it is a remembering. We know that when we come back, if we believe in incarnations and we believe in past lives. But also what I believe is that, we are all unique. We're all unique beings. 8 billion souls on this planet. No two of us have exactly the same frequency and energy that we emit. We're all a bit different. With some like similar. That's why we like people, and we kind of, so there were people that were placed on my journey that started to open these little doors, like plant these little seeds and start talking about it. And then I did a couple of different courses. And then I did a longer course, which was great. And it was a bit like, oh my goodness, like all of this information and all of this wisdom, and through other mentors and everything. So it kind of evolved over time. And then I kind of was like, oh, okay, I do Akashic readings. I do this thing called Akashic readings, if anyone's interested. Because I was like, oh my God, I was like, oh my gosh. Because back in the day, 20 years ago, Reiki was a bit woo-woo. Like, everyone was a bit like, oh, you're a bit weird. Then I started talking about the Akashic records, and everyone was like, oh, that's totally woo-woo and like totally weird. So I was very much under the radar around it. So I had to then go again on another healing journey around visibility, around owning this, around learning how to express this. And that again took me a few years. It took me a beat. And then, of course, there was this nudge from Source to say, you need to go teach this. You need to let people know. And I'm like, again, all of these old limiting beliefs around I'm not good enough, that's putting myself far too much out there as a teacher, as a healer. And so it's been really, again, gradual. And I think the biggest thing for me is like over this is like there are things we navigate on each part of the journey as an invitation, and we can choose to say yes or we can choose to say no. That's our choice. That's the beauty of free will that we have here. We can, and we can choose which path we want to walk. Sometimes there's a nudge, sometimes we can ignore it. And then eventually, which tends to be what happens to me, is I get a big shove. And I feel like I have no choice, but it's like little pigeon steps, and then it's like, come on, get on with it. And then I'm like, okay. So it was gradual for me. It took me a while over the course of that time that I really started to own it and started to talk more into it, I think.
I think that that's incredible though, because again, like so many people have this really warped idea of like, you decide that you want to do something different, you decide you want to heal, you decide, corporate's not for you or whatever the thing is that you're walking away from. And then suddenly, instantly, you just have all the answers and you know what to do and it's super easy. And in reality, everyone I've spoken to, their journey's been just short of a decade or two or three. Like it's never a super quick, like, oh, we just jumped from here to here. And then, and again, it's that like wanting to plug everything into the masculine of, oh, we'll just get an instant answer and know what action to take. And like that masculine energy is very action orientated. And actually, the feminine energy is much more that intuition of
Yeah,
listening and plugging in and saying, what are those nudges? What should I be
yeah,
doing? And I completely agree with you. I'm very much in that same space of like the easy nudge will be placed in front of me and I will ignore it. And then I will just be shoved in the direction without any care in the world as to whether I want to go there or not.
yeah,
Because I do like there are certain paths that we're supposed to walk.
yeah,
I definitely believe that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's really incredible that actually, every single step along the way has been a new kind of like mini healing unfolding to like get you to
yeah,
this point.
yeah.
And like, isn't that so beautiful?
It really is. And I think when we lean into that, life becomes so much easier. Hand on heart, like if we can lean into that truth that this is actually, as we talked about, an unfolding, then everything becomes so much easier. And there's a very simple explanation why we don't step out of one thing and walk straight into a multi six-figure business as an entrepreneur when we've never been an entrepreneur before. And that is because if we think about the human mind, if we think about the human experience, if we were to understand and know everything there was about and heal immediately, everything or release everything that's been getting in our way to be able to be the next day a successful entrepreneur, we would explode. Like we wouldn't be able to handle the emotional experience, the spiritual awakening. People go into serious spiritual healing crises because they go through such a quick momentum and there's no one to hold them through it. They don't understand what's happening. They don't know how to implement it. And then they go walk the journey for 5 years or a year or 3 years or 10 years, whatever that is. And so if I look back at myself and I talk about this a lot. Like I look back at me a year ago, 6 months ago, when I thought, oh, I've got, things are good. Like I'm pretty sorted. This is all going. And I look back at that version of me not that long ago, and I think, wow, if I knew then what I know now, and I'm not saying it's like a massive quantum leap, it's just another 10 steps forward. I'd be like, wow, which then excites me about thinking, well, what's the next 6 months going to be? What's the next year of me? And okay, now I'm 50. I turned 50 last year. I'm loving 50 because I'm thinking, for me, this is the most beautiful place I could be. I know myself well. I understand my journey. I know how to navigate the challenge, and the challenges still absolutely arise. But who am I going to be when I'm 60? That excites me in a decade. I have no idea. From my vantage point right now, I could not possibly know what the next decade has in store for me. And I don't want to know. I want to experience the journey, the joys, the ups and downs, the learnings, the growths, the challenges, and to see who I become as a result of that. And that I think is the beauty. And when we lean more into that, I think we can have a very, very different life of joy, ease, flow, happiness, all the things that we desire, that we are like put on a tick list and go, I want this, I want this. It's all available to us. Just take your time, enjoy the journey. It's such a cliche, but for me, that has been, I think, one of the big learning journeys over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think some of the cliches definitely have a space in this
Yeah,
world. They're cliches for a reason. Enough people have said them, so I think they some of
exactly.
them do hold some weight, which is always good.
Yeah,
So, if somebody was starting their journey and they were in that space of feeling really disconnected
yeah.
from themselves, being really, away from their own truth, not necessarily feeling like they're in flow or they know what to do or what action to take, what would you say to them?
A few things, I think. I'd say don't give yourself such a hard time. Like, don't expect to know the answers immediately. Allow them to unfold. Because by putting such a huge expectation on yourself, you really are gearing yourselves up to fail. Because, and failure is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing to say. It's like, but you will always be disappointed that you're not where you think you should be. Take a breath, lean back, just give yourself permission to take your time. And look at how quickly time goes. Look at how quickly a year goes, 6 months. We're, at the end of May. I cannot believe we're at 5 months into the year, nearly at halfway through the year. And it's unbelievable. Like, you will accomplish what you want. Like, you really, truly will. So take your time, and also, find people around you that support you and love you. Not everybody will. Not everybody will get it. Not everybody will have the answers for you. Find the people that want to encourage you to find your own answers, that believe in you, get you, hurrah you, congratulate you, celebrate you, love you for who you are right here, right now, and what you're coming with. Find those people. We exist. I can promise you that. Not everybody just like wants you to like do your thing and like get on with it and, or get over it. And it's like there are people that really, truly, firmly believe in this age of like bringing in new earth that we have got each other by the hand. That at times, like I'm leading from the front. I've got my tribe, my community, the people I lead, and we've got this. And like, here, come on, like we've got it. And then at other times, I'm going to need to grab someone else's hand when I'm wobbling, when I'm in challenge, and I ask for help. I ask for it now. I never used to. I'm like, I used to be independent. Like, I'm on my own. I can do this. I'm a strong woman. I don't need anyone else. Now I'm like, I don't even give it a thought. I'm like, hey, I need some help. Who in my community now can help me with this? And I ask them for their hand, and they give it to me, and they love me through it, and they guide me through it. And I move through it so much quicker. Like, it's a discomfort, it's a challenge, but I can move through it. And that doesn't mean to say I'm like done in 5 minutes, but I move through it much quicker than I used to, which sometimes used to, as I said, push me, feel like I'd been pushed back into the abyss and I had to crawl my way out. Now I'm just like, I've taken taken a bit of a stumble backwards, but someone's got me. And just have some patience with yourself. And I know that that probably feels like a lot, but start with whatever sings and like makes you tingle first. Is it that you need to go find a tribe? Is it that you just need to be like do some work on being kinder to yourself, or letting something go? Or is it about patience? Just tap into that. Take one small
Mhm.
step, and see where that takes you, because one small step in a different direction over time will take you on a completely different path that you never knew you were going to walk on.
I love that so much. I think that that is a massive thing in the healing journey is a lot of people feel like they need to do all of the things and take on everything and look at everything that's not working and change all of the relationships and change the whole situation, when actually it can be so much more subtle than that. It can be so much slower and so much easier
and
But a
kinder.
lot of people only figure that out
Yeah,
5 or 6 iterations into their healing
yeah,
journey. So, like, I'm so glad that we can share this with the listeners, like now, and for people that are just starting to actually say, like, there are, like, we're a whole tribe. Every single guest on this podcast, every single person who listens, like, every single person is here for the same reason and wants the same, like, amazing outcome in the world. And I think that that is so powerful to have like this resource where people can plug in, because we both know, and I have spoken to so many guests, and everyone says at the time that we started this journey, you know a decade ago, 2 decades ago, there wasn't resources like this. There wasn't information like this in the world. As you said, like, everything was kind of seen as woo and a bit weird, and oh, we can't look at that too much
yeah,
because we might, like, something bad might happen to us. Like, there was this, like, a lot of like scarcity around all of this like work.
yeah,
And I think now, like, if you're just awakening, if you're just coming into the space of being like something needs to change, like, oh, what a gorgeous time to be doing
yeah,
it. Like, it is so much more supported and so much more accessible. And I think just that whole process of being kind to yourself and loving yourself through this journey, and knowing that, it doesn't have, like, you don't have to make it hard for yourself.
yeah. No,
It,
no, I totally agree. And and just what you said there is so true. Look at the infinite number of modalities there are to support people in this work. And the beauty is that there is something for everyone. Go with what resonates, trust what you're drawn to, and take a step. And that's why, when it's like, what's the one thing that's, you would do? It's like, there's a few things, but like, trust what feels good for you, because you're unique. Your next step will be totally different from anybody else's, or it might be a similar next step, but the way you do it will be completely different to the next person. So trust that you have to find your way and like what works for you, and it will be perfect no matter what you pick. It doesn't matter. It'll be perfect for you because it will provide you the the clarity on the next step after that, and the next step after that, and the next step after that. Like, we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel until we've taken some steps through the tunnel. So take those few steps. The light will get brighter, the light will get clearer, the path, the end goal, the thing you're moving towards will all get clearer with every step. So trust that.
I love that so much. Yeah, it's so true. Like, it is literally a journey. And sometimes it does feel like you're walking into darkness and it's a bit scary, but there is always something good at the end. Like, if you're willing to push through and do the hard internal work, like, there's always something really kind of valuable at the end, which I think is so important.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
we have said multiple times as we've gone through this that there are multiple levels to healing. We do this multiple times. We've both gone on multiple journeys where we
Yes,
have
yes.
had to re-heal,
Still.
or, find something else to heal, or do all of these things. So what is your next level of healing? What is the thing that you're focusing on now? Because I love our listeners to understand that this is not a one-on-one journey and then you're done. Like, so
Yeah.
what's the next thing for you?
Yeah. So I think the next thing for me is like how I can really now step even more into my business as part of this, as one of the many light workers out there that's supporting others to really step into their own uniqueness and to really shine. So for me, it's really about overcoming that next level of getting myself out there, reaching more people, because there's a certain comfort to like, oh, I have my community, they like me, they trust me, and they get what we're doing and we're doing it together. And so there's for me, I feel it really is around business. It's around what we talked about, this whole beautiful energy of bringing in the feminine energy to listen, intuit, receive the wisdom, but taking that with sacred masculine action, which is about strategy, understanding where I want to go, what am I choosing at my next step. And so really like expanding more, like being more of myself, because as I said, like 6 months, a year, 10 years, like, where am I going? I get to choose that. I get to choose who I am in this moment, what choices I make. and where they inform my next steps. So for me, my next level really is about coming even more home to myself, and really allowing myself to be even more in my uniqueness. There's still so much pressure to conform to society, culture, religion, upbringing, what's acceptable. And I really want to break those old paradigms. For me, it's like, how do we just be more of who we are? How do we get out there and just be us and say, you can have a judgment, but it not be like, you talked about the arrow as a different analogy, but like an arrow through the heart where you think, oh my God, I'm going to die if someone doesn't agree with me. And so, like, if we could come to a world where there's more peace, that we are all unique and all different, that we don't all have to think the same, we don't all have to agree with each other, I think the world would be a very different place. So if I can sprinkle more of that out in the world, my mission would be somewhat fulfilled alongside other leaders who are doing this work. So yeah.
That's incredible. I think it's such an amazing thing, and I think such a beautiful like end to the podcast as well, is to just like that thought of you have no idea where you're going to be in like a decade, in 10 years, but you're so excited about the fact that you can rewrite your whole life in that time, and that so much is possible. It's not that same, like I had a very similar thought at about 30 of, is this what my life is going to be? Is this all it's going to be? And I think like for anybody who's in that space, just understanding that every single decade you have, you get to completely rewrite, get to live a completely different life, get to be a completely, like different person. And just there's so much possibility in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that that is such a beautiful thing for people to understand and to kind of leave people with as they go through this process. So thank you so much for joining us today. It has
Thank
been an
you.
absolute honor to talk to you.
It's been such a joy, Jackie, really, truly. Thank you. I mean, as you said, I could probably talk about this for weeks, years, decades. So, but yes, it's a joy to come in here and just give a little bit of a sprinkle of the magic that's possible for every single one of us here on planet Earth. So.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Natasha. It has been incredible. Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of the Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Diary of Discovery.